Oh, baby. Hey, what's up? How's it going? Welcome to the stream. Getting a little coffee going. First day back working out, and I bust my knee up. So I'm a little depressed today, guys. But the good news is two crazy things happening today. Ryzen 7000 series from AMD, and it's our 200th episode on the crypto mining show, which I guess we started now at this point almost over a year ago. What are we in September? Actually, I believe exactly a year ago almost. Let me go and look at that. Not quite. I think we technically started in October, but we are coming up on the 1 year anniversary as well. I'll double check and make sure that we talk about that when it actually happens. Today on the show, we are talking about primarily Bitcoin today. You see, there's some mining stuff going on, and we got to get it covered because on this show, we talk about cryptocurrency from the perspective of a cryptocurrency miner, and that is yours truly, who goes by Matthew in real life and Blind Run on the internet. And we are going to talk about Komodo adding some stuff to the AtomicDEX, which is really interesting. And then we got some pool listings, etc. And then for episode 200, I wanted to make sure that we caught up on Q&A because yesterday we didn't have a ton of questions and answers. Actually, we had zero. So today I'm going to make sure I have a little bit of extra time at the end so that we can do some Q&A, some super chats hopefully as well, you know. Support your boy over here. But right now, the best way you can support the channel, of course, is always hitting that like button down below and sharing out the stream. Let's go ahead and run the ad, and then we will get into the show and more right after that. Today's sponsor is Crypto.com. Crypto.com is my go-to centralized exchange for liquidating my crypto assets. With their Crypto.com Visa debit card, I can load up my mined Ethereum to pay for power and other operating costs. In addition to the Visa debit card, there are additional fiat options, including wire transfers, to easily receive your profits. Crypto.com also offers additional services, including trading and even staking to earn additional revenue on your investments. Join 10 million plus users buying and selling 100 plus cryptocurrencies at true cost by using my affiliate link in the description for a $25 funding bonus. Or enter referral code SOAT at sign up for the same bonus. Remember, cryptocurrency investment comes with significant risks, so do your own research. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Lots of crazy stuff going on in the world, though, too. I'd be amiss if we didn't mention a few of those things that are probably going to impact us. I will mention it at the end of the stream. But to be fair, you know, it will get a little political. I make sure that it's tied specifically, of course, to cryptocurrency if it does. But there are a couple of obvious large news items that hit, you know, right before the show that I think are relevant, especially as it pertains to energy. And energy and Bitcoin mining and crypto mining in general go hand in hand. In fact, we have an entire article here that is posing a different viewpoint about Bitcoin mining and its sustainability, basically because there is a group of people that are saying that basically, you know, we aren't using as much renewables with cryptocurrency mining. So this will get interesting. But first things first, as always, we like to cover, you know, new mining software releases. I also wanted to mention this because I keep getting this question. People are asking, like, how do you find coins? The number one way to find coins is by literally checking GitHub mining software releases over and over and over again. Now, you don't get in on the ground floor with this method, right? Because typically, you know, right when a coin releases, especially if it's built from the ground up, the actual dev will release a specific miner that is only built for that specific algorithm and by that developer for that coin. But you start to see them, algorithms and stuff start to get added into new miners. And when you see that new algorithm get added, it may be a hint at a spec mineable coin. I've seen this multiple times here in recent history. Now, this one you guys have probably heard of because we have talked about it a little bit. But WildRig Multi 32.3 beta has implemented SHA-512.256D. Okay. So that is now available to mine with on this miner. Of course, there is other support out there. So if you guys want to go check that out, there are other ones that you can utilize to mine this in particular. What's this a hint at? I mean, yes, sir. That is Radiant. That is RXD. And we had already a little bit talked about RXD on this show a little bit. So the word's getting out, right? But if you would have caught Radiant, you know, a couple weeks ago, month ago, something like that, you may have been ahead of the game. And how did I catch the Radiant before? I caught it on SRB Miner, the GitHub. So I think like basically pulling all the mining software GitHubs and looking at them every day to give yourself a head start. Obviously we do it on this show every day as well. You know, that's going to be one of the best ways that you can find information on it without, you know, actually getting in on the ground floor, which can be a little bit more difficult. And we can talk about that in another video because I have some ideas. And we have new CPUs releasing today from AMD. We have the Ryzen 7000 series. Presumably, you know, from the CPU perspective, these should be pretty killer at mining cryptocurrencies. And that is because we are seeing more cash on these things than we've seen pretty much on any other CPUs that have ever existed, right? If you looked at, for example, the Ryzen 9 5950X, we had 72 megabytes of L3 cache, 64 megabytes of L3 cache with 8 of L2 cache. And now on the top end model with the 7950X, we have 64 of the L3 cache and 16 of the L2 cache. However, we can't always purely judge it off of the amount of cache on the CPU, because as we saw with the 5800X3D, which we had tested on this channel and you can go watch, it was extremely disappointing and really fell in line with the 5800X. Yes, it did have some performance increases here and there, but I think part of it also is the L2 cache. You know, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the 16 megabytes of L2 cache on the 7950X, the 64, the high core clock compared to the 5000 series. See how that helps bump it up. I am super excited about this from the performance aspect of mining. And yes, I'm going to be trying to get my hands on one to test for you guys on the channel. You know, wait till I get out and get that tested for you guys before you buy, of course, unless you're, of course, purchasing for different use cases. That being said, you know, CPU mining isn't necessarily incredibly profitable. It's definitely hard to scale. So, you know, as opposed to a GPU mining rig where you can plug, you know, up to 12 GPUs into a single motherboard with a single, you know, CPU. On CPU mining, you know, unless you're going server grade hardware, which is astronomically expensive, on the CPU side, you have to buy a motherboard, memory, a drive, you know, a power supply per motherboard, right? There are some outliers, I think, or some outlying ideas. There we go. One of the ideas I've had that I feel like, and I've talked about this before, that I feel like parallel miners should be hopping on, is essentially a breakout board with 24-pin and 4-pin CPU connectors, because then at least you could get rid of the need to buy a power supply for every single motherboard that you're mining on. And I really think from the breakout board perspective, you know, where basically parallel miner takes a breakout board, they add a bunch of PCI powers, the 8 pins or the 6 pins, 6 pin to 8 pins technically, and then you plug that in to a server power supply and power multiple GPUs with it. They do have an option that has like a single 24-pin and a single 4-pin CPU. I would like to see, you know, on the high end, especially if we're talking about like their platinum rated power supplies with the, you know, 220 to or 200 to 240 volt support. I would like to see multiple 24-pin and CPU 4 pins on a single breakout board. So at least from the CPU mining perspective, you could reduce at least the amount of power supplies you're buying. Because also the thing is at the low end on the power supplies, look, if you're running, even at the top end, right? If we're running like a Ryzen 9 7950X, right? At 170 watts, total systems probably, you're not going to need more than 300 watts. But, if you go out and buy an ATX PSU that's going to utilize like 300 watts, at the end of the day, they're typically less reliable. They're not as robust as like a platinum rated PSU for a server. So I think it would also help with like reliability and longevity on your systems as well. This is an idea I've had for a while. I'm going to throw it out there. I don't know if Parallel Miner's listening, but hey guys, it's a good idea. Chadwick says they have it. All right. Well, I ranted for no reason. Then at this point, I'll have to go Google it. I have never seen it. It was an idea I had for a while. But maybe they do have the CPU ones on the breakout boards. I know they have like a single one, but not multiple. You might have to link that to me, Chad. All right. And then Gabe says, all right, we'll get into this. Yeah, we'll get into, I forgot that we're on YouTube today. Let's go back to actually doing the show. All right, so the next thing that we have is we had a community member build basically a solo pool mining for Kaspa. Really cool. Obviously, it's in beta right now. I linked it down below if you guys want to go test. If you want to test a solo mining pool that was built by a community member. Huge shout out to Brandon here. I think it's super neat what he's done here. At this point, I don't know, like single individual lookups are kind of awkward, right? You got to have your Kaspa address and then you can click through it here to a certain extent. But, at the end of the day, really cool to see Mr. Brandon doing more. He also has his Kaspa Stratum bridge on the latest version as well, too. Super cool stuff. Make sure you go check it out. And there is a new listing on Mining Pool Stats for a coin called Novo, and it is SHA-256DT as far as the algorithm goes. And if you guys want to check that out, definitely feel free to check that one out. Now, let's talk about Komodo's Atomic Bridge will now connect to Cosmos connect Cosmos to hundreds of blockchains right after I take a sip from my coffee. All right, let's hop into it. Capable of supporting 10,000 swaps per minute, Komodo's AtomicDEX will connect Cosmos to both UTXO and EVM-based blockchains. Komodo has integrated Cosmos on AtomicDEX to connect the Cosmos ecosystem to other blockchain networks. Komodo's AtomicDEX is a cross-chain protocol DEX and non-custodial wallet that supports both UTXO and EVM-based networks. The integration will provide the Cosmos ecosystem with a permissionless and secure solution for trading with hundreds of blockchains, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, and Optimism. Komodo's AtomicDEX uses a P2P cross-chain atomic swaps, removing the security threats associated with centralized liquidity pools, AMMs, and complex smart contracts. Its current iteration supports 10,000 swaps per minute and is able to scale upwards if necessary. The AtomicDEX P2P network enables users to hold both the native Atom tokens and its wrapped versions to trade natively cross-chain. Caden Stadelman, the CTO of Komodo, said that Cosmos has some of the most innovative DeFi developers and projects, all of whom share the belief that the future is multi-chain. However, despite its growth, Cosmos failed to provide its users with viable bridging solutions. As of July 2022, Cosmos held 0.8 2% of the total value locked in DeFi. The network hosts over 200 purpose-built Cosmos native dApps and is growing continually. While there are some bridging solutions built on Cosmos, they only support Ethereum and Cosmos-based blockchains. Stadelman believes there is much room to grow, with innovation being the key to Cosmos growth. And obviously, like all of this is going through Komodo, which is the key point here. Komodo is going to be hopefully adding this support for Cosmos to everything outside of Ethereum, I think, at this point. And I've always been kind of like, I almost see like Komodo as, from a interoperability standpoint, you know, pretty much on par with Flux. Now Flux adds in the whole Web3 portion, the VPS portion, and so on. But I've always respected what Atomic's been able to do, especially with their cross-chain and multi-chain technology, allowing you to essentially spin up a blockchain project and, you know, get security from the original chain and also from Litecoin, which means pretty much if you want to spin up a project and have it secure, you know, Komodo is a great platform for that. And then from their AtomicDEX perspective, the interoperability is awesome. So adding another project to that is obviously welcome at the end of the day. So I wanted to mention that as an announcement. Now, Bitmain founder Jihan Wu setting up a $250 million fund to buy distressed Bitcoin mining assets. Yes, that is going to be the founder of Bitmain. Yes, he is buying back cryptocurrency mining rigs, maybe, sorta. You know, typically what we see Bitmain do in the past is this. They build units, they mine on them, presumably, right? We can't prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, but the way the network hash rates go up, it looks like they build a new unit, they mine on it, then when mining is no longer super profitable on that unit, they take it and they sell it to the main market. Or they do this too. They have a single like company that they sell the equipment to, you know, direct to. It's really hard basically for like individuals to invest in Bitcoin miners from Bitmain. And then, you know, when it gets to the point to where they're having issues doing bulk sales, they start selling to the individuals through the Bitmain website. This is kind of interesting because what's happening now is it appears the investment strategy is kind of shifting for Bitmain, and they are going to be purchasing, you know, mining assets back from the miners during a bear market. Wu's BitDeer Technologies will initially invest $50 million, and specifically too, he's the founder, but this is a separate company. It's BitDeer, not Bitmain. I should make that extremely clear here. And that's important because BitDeer and Bitmain have been in competition because there were two founders that disagreed on some stuff. So yeah, let's make that clear as well. Wu's BitDeer Technologies will initially invest $50 million and aims to raise another $200 million from outside investors. So this is kind of interesting because you have basically a crypto billionaire here. The founder of a Bitcoin mining rig maker Bitmain is setting up a $250 million fund to purchase distressed assets from mining firms. Wu founded Bitmain in 2013 but left the company in early 2021 to lead its spin-off BitDeer Technologies. A representative of BitDeer tells Bloomberg the company will initially put $50 million to work and plans to raise another $200 million from outside investors. Quote, "We can buy the cheaper machines and run them in our existing facilities with stable and cost-effective power purchase agreements," BitDeer CEO Matt Kong said. The collapse of the price in Bitcoin has combined with rising energy costs to leave many in mining industry struggling to keep their heads above water. Data center operator Compute North last week filed for bankruptcy, noting long-term debts of $128.3 million, sizably outweighing the company's assets. BitDeer did not respond to CoinDesk's request for comment. Now, obviously, we've been talking about the M&A, the acquisitions going on across the cryptocurrency mining sphere. This really is no different from that. The amount of investment doesn't seem as high as you would expect it to be to buy brand new machines, which is why I think it sounds like And I don't know what level of machines they're talking about. I don't know if they're talking about as old as S9s or if they're more talking about, you know, or the more recent generations like S17s or something along those lines. But it sounds like the goal is to basically buy out all the miners that have inefficient rigs and put them in a facility where they have locked in power costs. So at the end of the day, what BitDeer sounds to be doing is just essentially taking advantage of the market to expand, you know, their mining operations and actually mine themselves. This is what we've talked about, you know. I think at the end of the day, where the successful mining firms are going to be placed or positioned in, which is obviously being cash rich or capital heavy in a bear market, and then essentially preparing for that season of the bear market during a bull run. Seems like that's what BitDeer's done here. And what's extremely interesting about that, and maybe Bitmain just has this figured out, like these guys have the cycles figured out because they've been in so many of them before, to where it was like, if you see BitDeer spins off in 2021 and kind of shifts the strategy here to basically purchasing up older mining equipment and then obviously having themselves in a place to where they can have stable and cost-effective power purchase agreements. And so they put themselves in a position to basically be able to still be profitable or at least survive during a bear market from a power cost perspective, and be able to suck up all this old mining hardware that's now not efficient enough for people who have rising power costs. You know, not dissimilar from me. So, you know, we've talked about this shift, you know, multiple times, I think, in the Bitcoin mining industry. And we saw on this previous cycle, I think a lot of the mining companies go about it in the incorrect direction, where they were using leveraging a ton of capital to acquire debt to purchase more Bitcoin and more Bitcoin mining hardware, when, you know, the hardware was extremely expensive. And obviously now, hindsight 2020 though, to a certain extent, right? And maybe BitDeer had that hindsight, of course. It would have been better or more beneficial to just take that capital and hold it in cash for a time like now, when you're able to purchase up, you know, basically mining equipment for pennies on the terahash. You know, it's not quite pennies on the terahash, obviously, but you get the idea. That's kind of what we're looking at. And I think that'll be more important too, because I think there's going to be an attack on cryptocurrency from a environmental perspective. And I think we're starting to see that already. The CCAF now is basically coming out and saying that the original numbers, I think coming from the Bitcoin Mining Council, were incorrect. So what we're seeing now is essentially another side, of course, coming from Cambridge University. You guys can start lining this out how you like in your own heads. But I would say that it's becoming very clear that we have two sides to this battle surrounding Bitcoin mining, and specifically proof of work. I'm of the mindset that proof of work is the only thing that can actually provide, you know, individual sovereignty and financial freedom. Personally, that's how I see it. It looks pretty clear to me that the position, you know, Ethereum has put themselves in with the merge has shown that proof of stake makes itself more susceptible to government control and interference. And I think that a lot of the movements against proof of work mining, especially from the environmental aspect, is to a certain extent smoke and mirrors to shut down anything that gives the individual more freedom. That's how I feel about it. All right. So Bitcoin mining's sustainable electricity mix may be declining, says Cambridge University Research Organization. The CCAF uses publicly available data to run a theoretical model to estimate the environmental footprint of Bitcoin mining. Cambridge University Center for Alternative Finances, the CCAF, latest research into Bitcoin mining suggests the mix of sustainable electricity used is in decline. The CCAF, which is part of the Cambridge Judge Business School, uses publicly available data to run a theoretical model to estimate the environmental footprint of Bitcoin mining. It does this by breaking down its electricity mix and calculating its greenhouse gas carbon dioxide emission intensity per kilowatt hour. It found that emissions intensity for 2021 was 506.71 CO2 emissions, essentially the GCO2e, which is the carbon dioxide emission intensity that we defined earlier, over the kilowatt hour, compared to 491.24 in 2020. Data for this year is so far only available up to January, so no conclusions can yet be drawn for 2022 at the time being. Since 2019, the CCAS Bitcoin mining or Bitcoin electricity consumption index has provided a daily estimate of the amount of electricity used by Bitcoin mining globally. Additionally, its mining map rolled out in 2020 is used to visualize the geographical distribution of mining activities. Now the CCAF has combined the two elements to estimate greenhouse gas emissions attributable to Bitcoin more fully. While electricity consumption is an important factor, it does not take into account the differing electricity sources that power mining from one country to the next, and how these different countries' relative shares of the global hash rate vary over time. The uptick in fossil fuel emission intensity in Bitcoin mining from 2020 to 2021 could be attributed to the collapse in share conducted using hydropower since the crackdown of industry in China last year. Here's my question about that, and I'll just pose this to you guys. I don't think you can actually attribute it to that because if I recall, the way China was getting cheap power was by spinning up old coal plants. And so, like, why is the narrative shifting now that it was all hydropower and moving over to the States is not, especially if we take into account that a majority of the hash rate that moved from China was trying to move to West Texas, where essentially you run off wind power and solar power. It doesn't really make much sense to me. It's like the narrative conveniently shifts and the numbers conveniently shift just based on if they can or cannot attack Bitcoin from an environmental standpoint. But my understanding is right up to the end there, China was powering up, where the Chinese miners were working deals with old coal plants to spin old coal plants back up and mine off of them. Now, another point to that we would have to bring up as well is, to my knowledge, they never stopped mining in China either. They just started using VPNs. So the mining, they did stop and move to places like Kazakhstan or West Texas, right? And if anything, like, I don't know, and 40% of it didn't turn off, at least from what we know at this point. So I don't know that I buy this. In 2020, the CCAF found that China accounted for 65% of the world's total hash rate, with the majority of mining activity there powered by either hydropower or coal. Hydropower's share in 2021, however, was down 18.5%, with the coals reduced slightly to 38.2%. The CCAF concluded that 37.6% of electricity used by Bitcoin miners comes from sustainable sources, compared to the 62% from fossil fuels. This figure is at odds with that provided by the Bitcoin Mining Council, which says 59% of electricity used by the industry comes from sustainable sources. And you heard my arguments like before. I start asking questions because clearly there's a huge disparity here. And I almost go back to like there's a Stoic quote that says, like, don't confuse me with facts, I'm trying to think. And I feel like this is the perfect situation where, like, us as people that can't go in and like validate all of this ourselves, because we're basically getting two different entities giving us two completely different figures here, have to start thinking logically about this and saying, like, okay, well, if you're saying it's because China shut down when they were clearly spinning up old coal plants, which was like your original argument, how much of this is true and how much of it is not true, right? if we're saying the majority of the hash rate moved to the United States and West Texas in particular, we know that West Texas is utilizing a ton of solar and wind power. Therefore, it wouldn't make sense that you would move hash rate that was running off of coal and spinning up new coal power plants in China over to more sustainable energy in a place like Texas, and then you would all of a sudden have the numbers flip and it would be more dirty energy. That doesn't make any sense to me. So if I'm just thinking about this logically, then I tend to say the CCAF isn't making any sense to me because what they've said previously compared to what they're saying now doesn't add up, right? But, you know, they'll provide us with their facts. We could be just as amiss and miss it with the bias and side with the Bitcoin Mining Council, right? So here's another point that I would bring up. Bitcoin Mining Council, do they attribute the fact that there was a bunch of hash rate that moved to Kazakhstan where it is dirtier energy, right? Because they're a poorer third world country. They have more coal plants. They spun more up there. So I couldn't tell you that either one is right. All I can really tell you is that you have to think about what you're being told from both perspectives and then realize that their facts are just being manipulated to support their narrative at this point. And that includes both the CCAF and the Bitcoin Mining Council. Government, regulators, and others frequently cite the energy-intensive nature of proof-of-work Bitcoin mining as one of the main flaws in the world's largest cryptocurrency, with some taking a proactive stance towards attempting to curtail it. Earlier this month, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, the OSTP, published a report on Bitcoin mining, calling for more research so that federal agencies can minimize harm on the environment and electricity grids. I still think this is a narrative to remove proof-of-work. And the reason you want to remove proof of work is that it is clear if you have proof of stake that the U.S. will find some way to claim jurisdiction over all of the transactions on it. Will they do that successfully? It's hard to tell. But what we can see is that somehow the U.S. government has successfully removed the rights of its citizens systematically over the past 20 years, utilizing different narratives that cause fear in the public, right? From, you know, Afghanistan and the Patriot Act to more recently, of course, COVID and the lockdowns. And now we're moving into the environmental push. And, you know, I hate to throw on the tinfoil hat here, but it's hard when you go and you actually see these people stating the particular strategy and then the strategy being moved, actually played out. And the next portion in this strategy, apparently at this point, is to have a huge environmental push to basically make the public feel guilty about the environment, to basically start to restrict different freedoms and so on through that narrative. Will that be the case? I don't know. But if when we start to see attacks on this from the perspective of basically, I can tell you that proof of work has a better chance at this point of providing financial autonomy and individual financial freedom for sure, than proof of stake, and there's a huge move against it from the environmental side, then I go, well, maybe that wasn't such a tinfoil hat theory that I was hearing. And these are things that I think about. They're the things that keep me up at night, boys. Furthermore, Ether's recent merge from proof of work model to less energy intensive proof of stake with claims that it will make it 99% more energy efficient put further pressure on Bitcoin's mining mechanism. And of course it does. Of course that's what they will tell you. Duh. I don't think that it puts more pressure on it though. Bitcoin will not move to proof of stake. I don't think that there's any worry there. I think the reason Bitcoin is scary is because it's essentially impossible to move it to proof of stake. I think that's why it will see more regulation and more FUD thrown at it from this perspective. And we have to talk about energy because what's happening with energy, right? Just this morning, guys, there are leaks that hit Russian undersea gas pipelines in Europe. As you guys know, there is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine going on right now. What that is primarily impacting is energy resources, and especially, energy resources provided to the UK. from Russia. And right now, I think it's important to point out that, once again, like I was saying earlier, what we're talking about is energy crisis, environmental damage. This is the next push that basically the World Economic Forum has told us they will do. And it seems to be playing out, right? European countries on Tuesday raced to investigate unexplained leaks in 2 Russian gas pipelines running under the Baltic Sea near Sweden and Denmark, infrastructure at the heart of an energy crisis since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Experts and also Russia, which built the network, said the possibility of sabotage could not be ruled out. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions. Do you think sabotage is at play here? Sweden's Maritime Authority issued a warning about two leaks in the Nord Stream 1 pipeline shortly after a leak on the nearby Nord Stream 2 pipeline was discovered that had prompted Denmark to restrict shipping in a 5 nautical mile radius. Both pipelines have been flashpoints in an escalating energy war between European capitals and Moscow that has pummeled major Western economies, sent gas prices soaring, and sparked a hunt for alternative energy supplies. Quote, there are some indications that this is deliberate damage, end quote, said a European security source, while adding it was still too early to draw conclusions. You have to ask who would profit. Russia also said the leak in the Russian network was cause for concern and sabotage was one possible cause. No option can be ruled out right now, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters. Neither pipeline was pumping gas to Europe at the time of the leaks amid the dispute over the war in Ukraine. But the incidents will scupper any remaining expectations that Europe could receive gas via Nord Stream 1 before winter. And that's a big deal, guys. Like, obviously, I'm not in that geographical location, but I feel for you guys that are. Let me know how this, how you feel like this is going to impact you. I think the impacts are yet to be seen, but I think that this happening right before winter, there were already concerns from what I had seen running around that due to the energy crisis that we are experiencing right now, without this happening and the prices of energy across different nations within the UK, that we are going to see unprecedented deaths from the lack of heat this winter. Apparently COVID's a big problem, but people not being able to afford to heat their homes is not. I don't know. That just irks me a little bit. Yeah. The destruction that occurred on the same day simultaneously on the 3 strings of offshore gas pipelines of the Nord Stream system is unprecedented, said network operator Nord Stream AG. It is not yet possible to estimate the timing of the restoration of the gas transport infrastructure. Although neither were in operation, both pipelines still contained gas under pressure. Denmark's energy minister, Dan Jorgensen, said in a written comment that leaking gas had been detected in Nord Stream 2 on Monday between Russia and Denmark. Gazprom, the Kremlin-controlled company with a monopoly on Russia gas exports by pipeline, declined to comment. Russia slashed gas prices or gas supplies to Europe via Nord Stream 1 before suspending flows altogether in August, blaming Western sanctions for causing technical difficulties. I mean, it's not technical difficulties, it's financial difficulties, right? Like, yes, the sanctions are going to do that. Here's the problem that, I still have this problem with sanctions, which is why I still won't support cryptocurrency projects that participate in sanctions, like Flexpool, like Ethermine, like MEV, Flashbots for MEV. I won't support these crypto projects because they participate in sanctions. And all we see sanctions doing is impacting the individuals. And I'm of the mindset that, sure, you can say that the sanctions are supposed to, target the oligarchs and the Russian government, but at the end of the day, all it's really ending up doing is causing deaths in Europe because people can't heat their homes. That's what's really going to happen. That's all this ends up actually doing. The new Nord Stream 2 pipeline had yet to enter commercial operations. The plan to use it to supply gas was scrapped by Germany days before Russia sent troops into Ukraine in February. Godzimirski, a research professor at the Norwegian Institute of Foreign Affairs who specializes in Russian energy policy, said the leaks could have been technical malfunctions, but said sabotage was a possibility. The leaks happened just before the ceremonial launch on Tuesday of the Baltic Pipe carrying gas from Norway to Poland, a centerpiece of Warsaw's efforts to diversify from Russian supplies. Norway's Petroleum Safety Authority, PSA, had urged oil companies on Monday to be vigilant about unidentified drones seen flying near Norwegian offshore oil and gas platforms, warning of possible attacks. A spokesperson for the Swedish Maritime Administration said there were 2 leaks on Nord Stream 1, one in the Swedish economic zone and another in the Danish zone, adding that both leaks were in the area northeast of the Danish island Bornholm. Quote, "We are keeping extra watch to make sure no ships come too close to the site," a second SMA spokesperson said. Vessels could lose buoyancy if they enter the area, and there might be a risk of leaked gas igniting over the water and in the air, the Danish Energy Agency said, adding there were no security risks associated with the leak outside the exclusion zone. The leak would only affect the environment locally, which means that only the area where the gas plume in the water column is located would be affected. It is said, adding that escaping greenhouse gas methane would have a damaging impact on the climate. The Danish authorities asked that Denmark's level of preparedness for the power and gas sector be raised after the leaks, a step that would require heightened safety procedures for power installations and facilities. Breaches of gas pipelines happen extremely rarely. We want to ensure thorough monitoring of Denmark's critical infrastructure in order to strengthen security of supply in the future, said the head of the Danish Energy Agency. And like at the end of the day here too, what does this mean for, cryptocurrency? Well, there's a few things. One, like I talked about, the sanctions is a big deal to me because I think as a whole, like I've said before, we have like basically a fork in the road ahead of us. We have the fork towards basically essentially global fascism at the end of the day, in my humble opinion, which is going to be central bank digital currencies and the nation states controlling every single thing that the public does. Or we have Bitcoin, and we have another direction that allows for individual sovereignty and power over the finances. And I'm sure there could be like a few like variants of all of that, right? But it does feel like at the end of the day, those are the two paths we're taking. And there seems to be a huge amount of like economic strife being caused specifically by, or at least they're being caused by unprecedented events, but these events appear to be being taken advantage of by the people that are in power to make sure that they can remove the rights of the individuals. Like I've said, a perfect example of this that is very clear and pretty much undeniable would be utilizing the war in Afghanistan to implement the Patriot Act to remove some of the rights of U.S. citizens. But once we start talking about energy, at the end of the day, for cryptocurrency, first of all, home miners in those areas, you're not going to be able to mine because the power cost is going to be too high, right? So does that mean hash rate drops? Probably not. Like what the scary part is here, and it's kind of funny to see this shift, but I think we'll see a huge amount of cryptocurrency mining, specifically Bitcoin, surge in Russia, because essentially what happens in Russia at this point, to be clear, is going to be that we have a situation where they have excess energy, right? And what is the best way to utilize excess energy is to mine cryptocurrency. And they're dealing with sanctions, of which in general cryptocurrency can bypass to a certain extent. So all you've really done is enable Russia to set themselves up, if they're aware of this, into a much better position via cryptocurrency, and via cryptocurrency that is, I guess, stateless, right? That's the best way to put it. And then on the flip side of things, in the US, you just see a major attack on cryptocurrency to remove it, right? So which is at the end of the day, I think, weakening the technological and economic advances of the Western world, because you should always try to, in my humble opinion, spark innovation and push innovation along. But we're doing the opposite thing. You know, proposal of bans on proof of work, specifically Bitcoin and all that, and so on. So, and then other countries are getting rid of stable coins. I think that like this ends up in a very awkward position where you just end up bolstering Russia's economy, and it will be done through cryptocurrency to a certain extent. Which, I mean, I guess at the end of the day would make it easier for it to be demonized, interestingly enough, right? And that's where things will get extremely interesting, right? Russia will have low energy cost, excess energy because they're not supplying it to the UK. They'll start utilizing it to mine Bitcoin, which will put them in a better economic position. And then that will be demonized by the Western world. And bing, bang, boom. Maybe they use that to leverage the push of banning of, you know, cryptocurrency in the Western world, because initially where all the banning was happening was, you know, in places like Russia and China, etc., right? And maybe China moved a little too fast. Maybe China's going to back off on the cryptocurrency thing, especially if they see that as a potential to you know, be economically at an economic advantage, right? Anyways, these are the thoughts that I have. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. No right answers, no wrong answers, because we really can't see the future and tell what's going to happen at this point. This is just kind of, you know, more of the same at the end of the day too, right? I just think that it does put a lot of people within the affected geographical areas under in danger, right? Which is something I worry about. Let's get into the mining profitability, of which there is none, right after a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Crypto.com. Crypto.com is my go-to centralized exchange for liquidating my crypto assets. With their Crypto.com Visa debit card, I can load up my mined Ethereum to pay for power and other operating costs. In addition to the Visa debit card, there are additional fiat options, including wire transfers, to easily receive your profits. Crypto.com also offers additional services, including trading and even staking, to earn additional revenue on your investments. Join 10 million plus users buying and selling 100 plus cryptocurrencies at true cost by using my affiliate link in the description for a $25 funding bonus. Or enter referral code SOAT at sign up for the same bonus. Remember, cryptocurrency investment comes with significant risks, so do your own research. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. So first things first, what do we got here? Well, we got a very depressing what to mine to look at. And, you know, I think it's going to be, like I've said before, probably depressing for the next up to 6 months at the least. I guess we're a month in. No, we're half a month in. This has been a very painful couple weeks. It does seem to be dragging along. You know, it's like that song, is it the Green Day song? Wake Me Up When September Ends. You guys remember that song? It's like, I just want to play that song all day and take a nap. You know what I mean? Just sleep through this disaster. Wake me up when September ends, boys, because September is just not a fun month. We have hash rates here for the RTX 3090 with Ethereum or corrected ZIL hash, Kapal, ProgPal, and Firo proof of work hash rates. If we calculate that out, you could be the most profitable on NiceHash ZIL hash at basically losing 16 cents a day after 10 cents a kilowatt hour. You got Cero in second, losing 26 cents a day after power, and Kaspa losing 29 cents a day after power. You have to go down to Neox at 29 cents a day after power in fourth place. You got Xano and Ryo sitting here. You got some Raven coin losing 33 cents a day after power. We scroll down further. Firo proof of work losing 35 cents a day after power. You scroll down further. Vert coin losing 23 cents a day after power. Ethereum proof of work actually more profitable right now thanks to its pump than Ethereum Classic at 41 cents a day after power. Should be interesting to see if Ethereum proof of work garners any more hash rate from, you know, the ASICs on the network due to this event of essentially it being, you know, slightly more profitable. It is interesting that Ethereum proof of work does seem to somehow be getting a lot of projects spun up as well. If you guys haven't been following their Twitter, I highly recommend it. And their push for DeFi and NFT and all of that is looking extremely good. And even actually in comparison to Ethereum Classic, in my humble opinion, from a development standpoint, it seems to be kicking off to the point to where you could see, oddly enough, Ethereum proof of work have more projects on it than Ethereum Classic, which would be kind of depressing, but also I suppose there's more money behind it. Ethereum proof of work is especially odd now that Justin Sun has his own project, which is Ethereum Fair. So for the uninitiated right now, as far as I understand it, Ethereum proof of work is supported by Chandler Go. And then you have Ethereum Fair, which is supported by Justin Sun. Which one do you trust more? I guess I'd trust Chandler Go more than Justin Sun, but there's your kind of two options. You guys let me know in the comment section below. You know, obviously decentralization is supposed to take care of a bunch of that, but we also have this question of like what's going to happen with Ethereum right now. You know, we talked about a lot of stuff about Ethereum over the past 2 weeks, and you know, the compounding factors and the effects of proof of stake, you know, are starting to get very worrisome, I think, for Ethereum. For the most part, you know, the people that are supporting Ethereum seem to be ignoring it pretty good. It seems like if you look at the news cycle coming out and the PR moves, there's not mention of a lot of this stuff. But we're starting to see it, right? An 80% reduction of transactions on the network already kind of sketch, right? We know that that's coming from the fact of the matter that mining's not being done anymore. So you don't have any new Ethereum entering the market, which means you have no new Ethereum to be transacted with. That is compounded by the fact that you basically have a system in which it is more beneficial to move your ETH into some sort of staking service that wraps it for you and provides basically some sort of payout, meaning that essentially no Ethereum is being moved around because it's all just being locked up in staking contracts. And then you have the burning mechanism, which means every single time you try to transact on Ethereum, a portion of the Ethereum is being burned. So you're decentivized to actually do anything with your Ethereum because every time you do it, a portion of your Ethereum is freaking burned. So why would you do it? And then everything, because it's being centralized into a couple entities, those couple entities are utilizing essentially the same hardware services for cloud services like AWS, which means now you've centralized all your nodes into a single service of a corporation like Amazon Web Services, which is like, okay, well, great, that's cool. Amazon, I guess, could technically have control. And then the SEC looks at it and goes, hey guys, since you move proof of stake, guess what? Ta-da, we think you're a security. And because we think you're a security, we are going to regulate you. But on top of that, all your nodes are in the United States, and therefore, because it's proof of stake and the transactions are being done on the nodes and not by miners, and there's no payment being done between them, you're basically just a transaction processor, right, at that point, and all that is being done within the US, which means now, ta-da, as Ethereum, we have, you know, we are going to claim that the US has jurisdiction over all of the transactions on Ethereum. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but none of this information that we've come to light post proof of stake move has been positive for Ethereum. And the reason I bring that up, because obviously long tangent, but I like to describe everything that happened before we go into how that affects things, right? It's not unreasonable to look at something like Ethereum proof of work or Ethereum Fair and say, well, you know, devs might want to move to it. Why would devs maybe want to move to it? Well, it's the most updated version of Ethereum that's closest to it from a development perspective, but it provides the security of proof of work. And then in addition to that, you remove the issue of having to worry about jurisdictional issues with the United States. So all of a sudden, maybe the developers that were working on things or projects similar to Tornado Cash for obfuscation or for security or privacy of any sort, maybe they say, okay, well, this Ethereum chain's kind of done, and we move off of it. These are the thoughts I have. Once again, I'm just a dummy, and I'm just thinking through this out loud on this show. So you guys let me know in the comment section below what you think about it. And let's go ahead and look at mining pool stats. Bitcoin did pump up yesterday. Remember, we had a pretty big pump over the weekend in hash rate, and it is kind of holding steady longer for a few longer days than it did previously when it went up in hash rate. Maybe it's cooling down enough outside in the Western Hemisphere to support more hash rates. And plus, of course, you have basically small miners that had bad power contracts being bought out. That's going to be part of this too. In addition to that, we're back over $20,000 per Bitcoin with a 5% pump. So yeah. Congratulations, good sir. If you are a Bitcoin maxi, we should see between 18,000 and 24,000 for the foreseeable future, all the way to 2025 would be what I would think. Not financial advice. It's just these long, cold, bear market winters can be pretty harsh on y'all, and I get it. It's harsh on me too. Let's take a look at Ethereum Classic at 170 terahash a second. Remember, over the past week, we've dropped pretty much 30 terahash a second off of the network, an additional 30 terahash a second off the network. Majority of this hash rate hasn't moved anywhere. Like we saw on Ergo, pretty much Ergo has absorbed 0 hash rate post-merge. So at this point, because of its difficulty adjustment issues, which we can take a look at here real quick, we'll show you guys, just so that you're up to date. Before the merge, we had 50 terahash a second. Post-merge, we've actually lost 25 terahash a second. That only translates to about 12.5 terahash a second if it was going to be Ethereum hash rate. But the moral of the story is Ergo has absorbed 0 hash rate from Ethereum. We're seeing more hash rate from Ethereum that moved to Ethereum Classic, drop off of Ethereum Classic, right? Another 30 terahash. Now, some of that is moving, right? So you can see where it's moving to. Where is the Ethereum Classic hash rate moving to? We lose about 30 terahash. We pick up, what do we pick up? We pick up about 20, 25 terahash a second on Ethereum proof of work. And then we pick up 10 terahash here. So the Ethereum Classic hash rate move is actually, seeable here. We're seeing it move to Ethereum proof of work, and we're seeing it move to Ethereum Fair to a lesser extent, with obviously a more of a bullish movement to Ethereum proof of work. I think that's because, honestly, I think people trust Chandler Go more than they trust, Justin Sun. So I think that's partly why. Ethereum Classic, it's also down a percent point. But if you look at Ethereum proof of work, it had that recent pump. It's up 49%. You look at Ethereum Fair, it's up 62%. So, as a miner, they're incentivized to move to networks that are going to pay them out better. And as we saw on What to Mine, right now, Ethereum proof of work obviously is paying out better. So those are kind of the reasons behind all of that. Did we see any moves to any other coins, over the past week? No, not really. Flux is still sitting around, or was sitting around, that 8 mega solutions a second. If anything, we saw them lose some hash rate here, it looks like. But, this can be an API problem. I tend to trust the network hash rate here over what the pools are reporting. So if we're still at that 7.5 mega solutions a second, we haven't moved at all. We'll have to keep an eye on this, though, because this is kind of new. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with the pools, but my assumption would be something's wrong with the API reporting from one singular pool somewhere down here, reporting incorrectly. It's hard to tell. But, it's not like the hash rate didn't come off of Ethereum Classic and move to Flux, right? So another thing that means is that the hash rate, that 200 terahash a second or so, that's on Ethereum Classic, more than likely is ASICs. So that's an interesting thought process, right? It's not like it's GPUs that can move to something like Flux or Ravencoin. And the same story is on Ravencoin. Like post-merge, we've settled out a little bit. In fact, like lost a little bit of hash rate, if anything. I think more and more GPU miners are just turning off at this point. That's what we're seeing. So if the Flux is accurate, if the Ravencoin is accurate, obviously if the Ergo is accurate, what we're seeing essentially is GPU miners shutting off. And then from the Ethereum or from the ASIC perspective, we're seeing, you know, ASIC miners move off of Ethereum Classic and trying to move to Ethereum Fair or Ethereum Proof of Work for some quick profits. That seems to be the moves that I'm seeing here in particular. We do know that there's some smaller networks like Kaspa that's picked up some hash rate. This one's very obvious though. This kind of like peak and valley was due to, you know, the Kaspa hash rate moving over to Ergo to try to support Ergo and move them through to the next epoch. And then once the next epoch was hit, you know, miners came back over to Kaspa. Congratulations to the miners that were, you know, got a little bit of a reprieve on the difficulty on Kaspa there for a little bit, I suppose. And then, I mean, there is stuff like Radiant and so on that people are moving to. But as people move to it, like we've talked about before, it really just hurts the profitability. But the good news is, too, if you were early on one of these, you had some really good paydays, right? If you were early on Kaspa, what'd you see? You know, we're all the way up to 0.5 of a penny. Huge gains over what it was, you know, just a little bit ago. And then the same thing with Radiant, right? If you're mining Radiant before it was even listed on an exchange, like you're probably having a great day. Plus that 118% pump over the past 7 days. This is why I say, you know, right now is the time where you're going to, as a GPU miner, I think be more beneficial in finding spec mineable coins that are, you know, still maybe even in testnet at this point. And you know, messing around with these large ones, you're competing with much larger farms. You're competing with farms that, you know, are pretty rough. I think from a whole mining perspective too, you can kind of bob and weave a little bit. You know, maybe you have some sort of outside income from a YouTube channel that you can pay your power bill with. You know, I can't afford my whole farm to spec mine, but I can spec mine on 3 to 5 rigs or whatever it may be. And then, you know, luckily, like we've hit 2 in a row. Personally, I've hit Radiant and Kaspa. I'm hoping to hit a third one here too soon, a third and fourth one that I have my eye on. You know, it's one of those things. If you can hit a couple of these, you really put yourself in a position where, you know, on the Kaspa side of things, yes, I had to mine 6 months to do it, but that's 6 months of mining with one, you know, GTX 1063 gig rig. Actually put me into a position now to where if I really wanted to, I could probably just pull that out for the next couple months to cover power if that's how I want to decide to roll it. So these are these are the ideas that are bouncing around in my head. Once again, not financial advice, just how I'm thinking through it all as we work through it. I think it's more beneficial to find networks that are going to give you a little bit more. I think right now, from my perspective, what I'm focusing on is like, and it's a fun way to do it, right? Figure out what power I can afford to pay for out of pocket and play the moonshot game, right? From the mining perspective. And that is obviously like, okay, here's the other argument that I hear from people, right? Turn it off. Whatever you save for the power, take that money and buy the coins you want. Sure. You're not going to go buy a spec mineable coin that is not listed on an exchange. There's some over-the-counter trading, but that can be extremely risky, meaning like if you're doing over-the-counter trading on a Discord or something like that, you could send the guy some USDT and he never sends you the coin. So be extremely careful with that. So the safest way to get the cryptos that are not listed yet is to mine. So that's the benefit that you're looking for. So there you go. ASIC miner profitability, we still have the Antminer L7 in first place. It's over $15 a day today at $16.01 a day. Nice to see. And, you know, if you're mining Doge directly, you get 678. But never forget the merge mining power of Script. We got the iPolo V1 in second place at $11.17 a day. And then we have the Jasminer X4, which is saying it's at $10.04. I don't know. I feel like it's way lower than that because Ethereum proof of work is not anywhere close to that. Ethereum Classic's at 724 a day, I suppose. Maybe, well, no, ETH proof of work isn't. The only idea that I have here is people are renting this out to mine Ethereum Fair potentially. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think's going on there. You got the iPolo G1 at $9.80 a day on Grin and the IB Link BMK1 Max at $9.18 a day on Verge. Scrolling down, the KD6 is at $5.87 a day. And the Handshake 3 is at $5.25 a day. The Antminer S19 Pro is at basically $2 a day on Digibyte, and it's being rented for $2.86 on Mining Rig Rentals, but I failed to actually trust that at all. So the next thing that we got going on, of course, not that one. These are the coins that I'm following that are proof of work. Just to give you guys an idea, the past 24 hours, Kaspa is actually down, it says, at 0.004. Which is interesting because I think if we checked here, we were up and at 0.005. So I think, yeah, so it's trading off of TextBit at 0.005 and at, where's this reading from? It says TextBit. 0.004. I guess we need a refresh over here, but we did just refresh. It sounds like I need to go directly to TextBit, to be honest with you. So let's see. Let me go pull that up. Let's get the real price at TextBit here. Page not found. There we go. Let's get the real price for you guys right now. I think CoinMarketCap is correct. Yeah, so the real price is CoinMarketCap right now. So if we look at let's go back to my list. I like to look at these. The biggest gainer over the past 24 hours on the proof of work coins that I follow, GPU mineable, except for Ethereum Classic, which we have added in here. 10.6% pump on Neoxa. Ethereum proof of work has a 6% pump. Flux has a 4.62% pump. Ergo has a 3% pump. Ethereum Classic has a 3% pump. Beam has a 3% pump. And Ravencoin has a 1% pump, with Kaspa losing 1.87%. If we look at the 7-day change, we have a 73% pump in Ethereum proof of work. Beam lost the least amount. Ethereum Classic lost the third least amount. And then Flux is down 3%, almost 4%. Ravencoin down 4%. Kaspa down 6.38%. Ergo down 12%. And Neoxa down 16%. Let's get into questions and answers. Remember, super chats are never required. Always appreciated first to be answered. If you tag @SonOfATech, it will highlight the message orange, making it easier for me to read. And then I can see it. If you want to help boost the algorithm, super stickers, I've been told, are the best for boosting the algorithm. And then, of course, sharing out the stream, etc., is the best way to do it, and hitting that like button. If we get over 225 likes on the chat, that would be awesome. So go ahead and hit that like button if you can remember. We have a $10 super sticker from Stephen Cook. Thanks for boosting the algorithm. We have JKK saying, @SonOfATech, do you know a cheap VPS only for spec mining wallets so we don't risk other wallets? I think you mean risking other wallets by having the wallet on the same system as your as another wallet, because then, like, so a VPS is going to be expensive no matter what. Like, I think at this point, like, you know, if Flux really supported the ability to have like persistent storage at this point, it would be the cheapest, but you know, Flux doesn't really have that at this point yet. Of course, it's coming. Plus, you know, you have to whitelist all the applications on Flux, so you don't really have that possibility on Flux right now. But DigitalOcean, you know, Vulture, that sort of thing, like, unless you have some sort of money generation coming off of it, it's not worth it. What you can do, right, and because you don't have to run them. You don't have to run the virtual machine. You can, in theory, if you have like Windows 10 or Windows 11 Pro, you can enable virtualization in your BIOS and you can utilize Hyper-V. And with Hyper-V, all you got, and you can basically compartmentalize it, right? So you can take it, build a Hyper-V VM, go into there, build the wallet, sync it, you know, get your key and all that, and then just shut the VM down and you're done. It's not going to take up resources because it's turned off. Sure, when you boot it back up and you want to access it, you have to sync it again, but that's really, really easy to do in most cases, right? So I think that's the best way that you could handle it, that most people have immediate access to. The safest way to handle it is get a burner laptop. You can get pretty much any cheap laptop and install Cubes OS. And Cubes OS is here. I'll go get you guys the YouTube video. It's going to basically, Cubes OS runs all your applications in compartments.
What's up, son?
And I have a video here that we've done to cover it for you guys. The reason why this is badass is because essentially you could load this on a single, basically, like I have a little laptop that I put all of like, you know, little wallets in, and they are essentially compartmentalized all in there. Cubes OS, essentially, anytime you install an application, it installs it in its own environment. So you don't have to worry about it as much. So here is Cubes OS, or here's the video for that, for Cubes OS. And that one had help from Mr. Snowden himself. And that's probably the most secure way to handle wallets, in my humble opinion. Hope that helps. Queen of Random says, "Ask Son of a Tech, what would be the advantage, or what would the advantage be of using the Kaspa solo pool you mentioned over 2-miner solo pool? First of all, you further decentralize the network. 2-miner solo pool, basically everybody's mining to the same node, but if someone finds that, you know, whoever finds the block, 2-miners only pays them out. So first of all, you're decentralizing the network. Second to that, and you know, like we talk about it all the time, but we can clarify again, the advantage is the latency to the node. If you have better latency, your miners are going to be able to submit the blocks faster, which means you are going to be in a position to win a block faster, which means you have a better chance than if you are going through the internet to mine to somebody else. In addition to that, for Kaspa, there's some unique stuff with GhostDAG that add additional benefits, but I'd have to go into a technical breakdown. I was really hoping to have an interview at some point with the devs. I think Mr. Wolfie and stuff like that, they're supposed to help me out getting hooked up with the devs to do an interview. And then when I do, I definitely want to deep dive into GhostDAG and how that affects mining and mining profitability. The villain gamer, or the villain in this game, says Ask Son of a Tech just listed on MEXC. That was yesterday. GD Max says Ask Son of a Tech, I don't know what you need. Shio says Ask Son of a Tech, no sabotage on the gas pipeline. They're just made of Chinese-ism. I have no proof, you know, either way. You want to say there isn't, then okay. We'll just see how many people need energy and what the energy costs are going to be, I think, is primarily what really matters at the end of the day. How many people are going to die from not having power in their homes and able to heat their homes, I think at the end of the day is what really matters. What is the access to energy for the individual? What is the status, right? But I also feel like when people want to just say like, oh, like they're making all of that up, the easy counter to that is, why are they making that all up? So if they're making up a tax on a pipeline, or if I know like The pipeline wasn't being used, but it was planned on being used, right? Or it had the ability to be used to provide extra energy over the winter. Either way, right? If you want to say, oh, it's some conspiracy, they're trying to manipulate the public, then what is the actual intention of manipulating the public? It's to shut off their fucking energy. So at the end of the day, the fucking problem is the same. So why are we even worrying about whether what they're telling us is true or not? Because at the end of the day, your grandma that can't pay or afford to heat her home is going to fucking die in the winter. It's just frustrating that we go through all these semantics when the actual fact of the matter is it doesn't matter, because the result is still the same. People die. Individuals die. The result is still the same. Gabe says, AtomicDEX, what is stopping CPU coins from being GPU, since GPUs are almost as fast as cheap CPUs these days? Is it the development, or is there an algorithmic reason? I mean, ding, 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 bro. It's an algorithmic reason, right? So it depends on how the algorithm is built, and then if there is miner support. That is why you see CPU coins are core intensive, right? If we move them over to GPUs. So in the case of something like Kaspa, when Kaspa first launched, it was CPU mineable only. But mining software was eventually developed to utilize GPUs to mine. And then that allowed people to utilize GPUs and move up from there, right? And then eventually, like on these coins, if we follow the same path we follow with like Bitcoin, you end up, or similar projects, right? You end up with FPGAs next. And then from there, you end up with ASICs. Detroit says, AtomicDEX, can you clear up a brain fart for me? If you follow your guide and add ETHW to MetaMask, your wallet address is the same as the ETH proof of stake, correct? Yes. So MetaMask, pretty much like your Ethereum Classic, your Ethereum, like anything you add, your BNB address, anything you add into MetaMask, the actual address itself will be the same. Ryan Casper says, AtomicDEX, feelings on Meowcoin? I mean, Red Panda already covered it, so I figured like he's got it under control. Crisis says, AtomicDEX, about the gas in Europe, I would guess that when winter hits, they will start pumping gas from the Netherlands, even though it's unwanted, but a temporary solution. KMCN says, AtomicDEX, do you think the RX 470s and 570s are worth keeping for future mining? No, I do not. I think at this point, like the Polaris GPUs are phased out, in my humble opinion. Like what they're really good at is like what memory intensive stuff, but is something like, you know, is Ethereum Classic going to be really like at the level to where it makes up for the poor efficiency on those compared to the newer cards with better efficiency? Probably not at this point anymore, right? Peter says, AtomicDEX, can you give some direction on how to set overclocks for Kaspa? Yeah, I have a whole video on it. Right here. AtomicDEX. Oh, wrong button. My bad, guys. That's for the other stream. Ignore that. Ignore that. And then we'll just copy this out and get that pointed out for you. Peter Pang. I got you, boo. Now, definitely add in some limits, I think is going to be good. Like on a 3070, adding a 100 watt limit, or putting your actual core clock down, like an absolute clock down to like 13 or 1400 is going to be like the best. But, you know, you can get started there. The villain in this game says, AtomicDEX was mentioning that Kaspa just listed on MEXC when you were checking prices. It is listed on MEXC. We talked about it yesterday. We could go, here we go. We got that pulled up. Let's check the price on MEXC. The price seems to be within parity or close to parity of TextBit. The reason we were checking TextBit, to be clear, was because TextBit is the API that CoinMarketCap and Mining Pool stats are pulling from. So there you go. All right, what time is it? It is 11:07. I'm going to get moving on for the day. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out today. My goal is to pay some bills here and see how much money I have left over to go to Micro Center and pick up a CPU for testing the hash rates for the RX 7000 series. So that's what I'm going to work on. I think I'm skipping jiu-jitsu today because my knee is fucked. And yeah. Be sure to hit the like, comment, subscribe, and notification bell down below, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll see you next Tuesday.